The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, by Washington Irving. Part 2, The Gathering at Van Tassel's Farm. Autumn settled over Sleepy Hollow like a warm, golden quilt. The air grew crisp and fragrant with the scent of fallen leaves and ripening orchards. Fields were heavy with corn ready for harvest, and the forests blazed with color, reds, golds, and rusts, all set aglow by the mellow light of a low-hanging sun. During this season, the countryside seemed to breathe in anticipation. It was the time of year for cider pressing, for pumpkin pies, for storytelling by firelight and dances in the barn. Farmers completed their final labors and prepared for the long sleep of winter, and even the most sober of souls found reason to smile and celebrate. It was during this most festive period that news spread through the hollow of a grand gathering at the Van Tassel estate. Baltus Van Tassel, ever the generous and jovial host, intended to hold a bountiful harvest party. His barn, recently cleared of its summer hay, would be transformed into a place of mirth, filled with music, food, laughter, and merriment. For Ichabod Crane, the announcement was met with a rush of excitement and nervous anticipation. He saw in the invitation more than a simple evening of social engagement. It was an opportunity, perhaps the final and most decisive one, to gain favor with Katrina Van Tassel. He imagined the dance floor as a battlefield, his wit and grace as weapons, and Katrina as the prize he would finally win from the hands of his rival. Ichabod's preparations. In the days leading up to the gathering, Ichabod prepared himself with obsessive care. His finest clothes, threadbare but meticulously cleaned, were laid out the night before. He polished his shoes until they shone, combed his hair with more attention than usual, and practiced his courtly bows and smiles in front of a mirror. On the day of the party, he borrowed a horse from one of his hosts, a lean, broken-down old plow horse named Gunpowder, whose ribs showed through his coat like the slats of a barrel. The animal was gaunt, short-tempered, and possessed of a singularly evil eye. Yet to Ichabod, who fancied himself a gentleman of some standing, the horse might as well have been a noble steed out of ancient legend. Riding across the countryside, Ichabod's heart swelled with a blend of hope, longing, and ambition. He passed fields golden with corn, scarecrows standing sentry like guardians of some ancient harvest rite. The sky blushed with dusk, and the breeze carried the scent of apples and smoke. He imagined himself already a man of property, his days spent idly strolling orchards or reading beneath trees, Katrina by his side, the Van Tassel fortune in his pocket. The party begins. The Van Tassel estate was ablaze with life. Lanterns hung from tree branches, casting a warm glow across the grounds. The barn had been transformed into a grand hall, its rafters draped with garlands of autumn leaves, apples, and ears of corn. Inside, music echoed from fiddles and pipes as guests danced upon the polished wooden floor. Long tables groaned under the weight of food, roasted meats, steaming vegetables, pies bursting with fruit, bowls of nuts, platters of cheese, jugs of cider. The scent of spice and sugar mingled with wood smoke and hay, forming an atmosphere both rustic and enchanting. Ichabod entered with the air of a man stepping into destiny. He bowed graciously to the ladies, offered solemn nods to the men, and took his place among the crowd with what he hoped was effortless dignity. His eyes scanned the room until they fell upon Katrina, radiant in a gown of soft autumnal hues, laughing softly as she listened to her father recount some story to a group of farmers. Katrina met Ichabod's gaze and smiled. It was not an overly warm smile, but neither was it dismissive. With his confidence buoyed, Ichabod made his approach. Ichabod and Katrina dance. When the dancing began, Ichabod lost no time in leading Katrina to the floor. He pranced with more flair than finesse, but he was enthusiastic, and his energy amused the young lady. They spun and stepped among the couples, Ichabod grinning like a man possessed. All the while, he imagined Brom Bones, who watched from the side, arms crossed, simmering with jealousy. Indeed, Brom stood apart, making only occasional jokes to his companions and barely disguising the irritation in his eyes. Several times he seemed ready to interrupt, but Katrina gave him no opening. Whether she did so out of interest in Ichabod or simply to tease Brom was unclear, but it was Ichabod who danced with her through the night. As the evening wore on, the dancing slowed and the guests began to gather near the hearth, where stories were exchanged in low voices. It was then that the talk turned, as it always did in Sleepy Hollow, to ghosts and hauntings, and particularly to the Headless Horseman. Ghost stories by firelight. Old farmers recounted tales of strange lights in the woods, of voices calling out in the darkness. One man swore he'd seen the horseman cross the bridge by the church, his cape flapping like the wings of a raven, head tucked under his arm. Another insisted the ghost rose from the graves of fallen soldiers and rode beneath the full moon. Ichabod listened intently, eyes wide and fingers curled tightly around a mug of cider. He was both terrified and thrilled. His imagination painted vivid scenes in his mind, the ghostly rider galloping through the trees, the thunder of hooves, the hiss of wind, the glint of moonlight on spectral steel. Brom Bones, eager to reclaim the room, added his own tale, one that involved an encounter with the Headless Horseman himself. He claimed to have raced the ghost through the woods and barely escaped with his life, laughing as he told how he left the spirit in his dust. The crowd chuckled, unsure whether to believe him, but Ichabod noted how Katrina smiled at Brom's swaggering tone. The fire crackled, the night deepened, and the mood turned quiet, uneasy. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the trees like a chorus of old spirits stirring in their graves. Ichabod's departure. At last, the party came to an end. Guests made their farewells and began the slow walk or ride back to their homes through the darkened countryside. Ichabod lingered, hoping for a private word with Katrina. No one knows exactly what was said between them, only that Ichabod emerged from the Van Tassel house looking pale, disheveled, and deeply troubled. Whether he had proposed marriage or declared his affections, and whether he had been rebuffed or merely teased, no one could say. But as he mounted Gunpowder and set off into the night, he was no longer the confident dreamer who had arrived so full of hope. The path ahead seemed darker than usual, the trees more twisted, the road less certain. The stars had vanished behind thick clouds. The moon was hidden, and the wind blew cold. Ichabod rode on, alone and deep in thought, through a land where dreams dissolved into shadows, and shadows whispered of old legends eager to rise once more.